Hello and welcome to Not Run Right Way, the podcast. It's me, Melissa Manuel, she, her, hers, and I'm back with my bestie.
Me, Marv Madawa Kinyaga, they, them, theirs.
Hi, Marv. It's been a minute. How are you?
I've been doing great. Nobody knows this on the podcast, at least, but I actually recently visited Melissa right in time for the Eaton Fire. Hey,
Yay! It was great. It didn't
was
ruin anything at all.
no, not at all. I came home and my dad said, "You smell like ash, and you look so tired. Are you tired?"
Oh no. It was rough. I felt like a terrible host. I was so excited for you to come visit. I hadn't seen you in like over a year. And then all of LA caught on fire.
Yeah.
So sorry.
It was an impactful moment for me.
How so? Other than, the natural disasters.
Yeah, the natural disasters. It was like this real interesting merging point. I think I told you about like how it triggered this memory very specifically of the 2007 fires in San Diego. And like waking up and there's a cat screaming and he's clawing at the door and like everything's orange. And then that same experience of a cat screaming and scratching at the door, but it's your cat Mimikyu trying to get out of the bathroom.
Yep.
And then the fires sort of setting the scene for that. It was interesting.
Yeah, you were a real trooper. You were so kind and gracious. Well, we figured everything out. Because for the listener, we had a very different plan, as I'm sure everyone did. And I mean, we were very lucky. I do live in Pasadena, so we were very close. But we didn't lose our home. Like, on the grand scheme of things, we were very fortunate. But, like, the plan for that weekend was very, like, planned to the minute because I had Marv flying in and I had 2 other friends flying in. So it was going to be like a big weekend. I'm engaged, so we were going to go dress shopping and it was going to be crazy fun. We're going to get dinner and all these plans. And I just called my 2 other friends and I was like, maybe you should cancel your flights because LA's on fire. And so they did. And then we evacuated Pasadena for the weekend and went to Orange County and made the most of it. But yeah, it was not what we planned, and that is life,
Yeah, so true. So true. It's something that I always like have to keep in mind as a social worker. In working with people, there's no like literally nothing is static. There's always room for change, for growth, for an upset in your plans. And rolling with it with a smile, or at least not like a frown.
Yeah.
It's like important to the work I do, and I'm glad I didn't seem too awful of a guest.
No, you were amazing. I mean, we've been through a lot of crazy things, like the pandemic. We lived together during the pandemic, like peak pandemic, and the 2020 election, and I don't know. We've been through a lot together. So it was just like, what's another one?
What's another one? Yeah, so true.
And we got to watch a lot of TV together, which was great. But I don't want to delay any further because we have an amazing guest with us today. His name is Miguel Baltazar, story artist at Walt Disney Animation Studios, and is a friend of a friend who we haven't had on the podcast yet, but maybe we will someday. Everyone, welcome Miguel.
Hello.
Hello. What's happening?
How are you? How did you survive the fires?
Funny enough, well, I mean, not funny, but like I live in OC, so I live in Orange County. So thankfully I was away from the fires, but it's been rough just thinking about my coworkers who live really close. There's actually somebody that I know at the studio who actually lost their house in the fire. So thankfully everyone's, collectively making an effort to raise money and try to help out, and a bunch of other coworkers too, just trying to pitch in. But thankfully I'm good, healthy. And yeah, so hopefully things can start to recuperate, and glad that you were safe as well. You, Melissa and Marv, are safe as well, because that's scary. You guys are planning something totally different, and then literally they're saying you need to evacuate potentially.
Yeah,
right. So glad that we're all here, safe and sound. But I'm
We're all
super
good.
excited to chat with you guys, and happy to share anything that could be helpful to your listeners in the long run. So yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for being so generous. Yeah, it's been definitely a crazy time for everyone in the industry. It's not easy.
Mhm.
One of our past guests also lost their home, so
Oh
been
man.
sharing their GoFundMe. It's been oddly beautiful to see all of LA come together and support each other and come out in waves to volunteer and donate and be just people together in a
Mhm.
time of loss. So the good with the bad.
Yep.
Ain't that the truth?
Well, Marv, do you want to start with your hard hitting question?
Yeah. Miguel, as a social worker, I started off minute one, deep questions. What's your birth date? What's your family history? What's your medical history? All of that
Uh-huh.
shit. Today, my question for you is, if you were a spice, what spice would you be?
Oh my god. Oh, that question hits hard. Spice? Um, that's a good one. That's a really great question. Spice. Give me some examples, because I feel
I
like
would I would say I'm a cinnamon.
okay.
Mm,
Okay.
I would say I'm cumin. I know
Okay.
Marv hates cumin. I know because we've had this discussion many times. It's not a staple spice in Mexican cuisine, but it's a staple spice in my cuisine. I love cumin. I love it.
Interesting. Okay.
There's paprika.
Y-
There's
yeah, I think I was gonna
oregano.
say paprika. Yeah. Oh, oregano.
Really?
Yep. I'm
Oregano.
oregano. Yep. Through and through,
Okay,
100%. I will
that's
die on that
a
hill.
staple spice.
Staple spice.
So true. So true.
Why would you say oregano?
Me? I don't know. It's different, and I don't know. I just had it since I was a kid, especially when I put it on my pozole. I don't know. Something about that just hits. So it's like the flavor of it is like it's distinct. I don't know. I don't know if I tie it to myself, but I don't know. Just something about oregano just feels
Yeah.
different.
Now that we got the hard hitting question out of the way,
What a great question.
uh,
I love that.
will you share with us a little bit about how you started? Like, did you know you always wanted to be a storyboard artist, an artist at all? Or did you have a different first passion?
That's a great question as well. Also, I forgot to mention, my pronouns are he, him, his. I love how you guys preface that, which is really good. So, to answer your question, I feel like I've always been interested in being an artist. I think I remember like when I was 4, my mom took a photo of me like just doodling on a piece of paper on the floor on carpet, by the way, no clipboard. So like I would just like sketch on this piece of paper, and that pretty much was like the starting point for me. I don't think there's any other career in mind other than like teaching, because growing up I had like really great teachers. I had really great experiences with teachers in elementary, junior high, and high school. And so I figured like even as a young kid, I'm like I'd love to teach, because I like similar to Marv, right? Like I love engaging with people like on different aspects, right? Helping them out, mentoring them, doing that. But yeah, like I love drawing, and similar to y'all, I love consuming TV. Like I'm a Cartoon Network kid through and through. Grew up watching Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, Courage the Cowardly Dog. And so like watching those shows just inspired me to just draw, even if it wasn't necessarily animation, just draw in general. And also growing up Latinx and being first gen, it was interesting that I kind of went this route, because culturally speaking, at least in my family and most families, right? Like choosing to be an artist at least is seen as like a hobby, especially when you're growing up. Like, oh, look, a little Miguelito. He's just, he's doing his little drawings. That's really cute. At some point, he's gonna have to snap out of it and consider a real job, right? And that's totally valid. Like, I don't feel any sort of ill will towards that. But at the same time, it's like there aren't a lot of people, especially within my circle, who grew up to eventually be an artist in any sort of capacity. But I just love drawing, and I figured that was something in my DNA. So yeah, like I've always loved drawing, and I feel like there's something about it that just made me feel happy, safe. Because I grew up a very like shy, introverted kid, and so that was my way of kind of in a weird way, kind of being able to engage with people, especially if they saw me draw, like, oh my God, wow, this is really cool. Did you do that? And then that was my way to like kind of break in, weirdly enough. But sometimes I'm like, get the fuck out of my way. Like, leave me alone, right? I'm just gonna do my thing. I have a chapter 3 to write in my never ending story of, gods and like, planets and wizards and whatnot, right? So and that kind of ties down to story. Like I love stories, and just being able to try to create my own was always like that motivator for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about one thing you said, like it's in your DNA. Why do you feel like it's such a deep part of you? Like what inspires that kind of phrasing?
No, I'm glad you pointed that out. I've talked to students and other folks about like, because I always get that question like, how'd you get in and how'd you do that?
Mhm.
I feel like for me, drawing is just a part of my identity in the sense that it's who I am. It's how I'm able to express myself. And not just, and a lot of times people say like, oh, you were born with this gift, but I don't really see it as a gift as much anymore. I see it more as like I cultivated this thing that I loved, and the more I did it, the more I realized it was a part of me. And I feel like if I were to give that up, I'm giving up a part of myself, because then
Mm.
I could move on with my life and do something else. But something about drawing, it triggers this thing in my soul, and like who I am, that like excites me. It makes me very like motivated to get up in the morning. And what I mean by like it's in my DNA, because I've been doing it for so long that like me doing something else, I don't know, I'll feel off. I feel like I'd be in limbo if I
Mm.
wasn't. And it was because I've cultivated it, and just having all these memories of like drawing stuff during recess and like come up with stories and like sharing that with people. I don't know. It's just something that I feel like it's what I chose to do. So I don't know if that answers it, but I don't know. I feel like the more I been in this industry, I just feel like, yeah, no, like this is just who I am. Like I
Mm.
can't give this up, right? Like it's the thing that excites me the most. It's the thing that gives me, purpose, right? So not to say that you equate purpose with, your work, but at least for me, outside of work, just drawing and storytelling and just being able to communicate that stuff visually, it's just I love it. I live for it.
Definitely. I mean, I could see it in your work, in your art style, and even in the stuff behind you. It's your passion. It's something that really matters to you, and I relate to that. So I understand. And was there anybody who became like your first mentor, who kind of guided you and was like, this can be a career?
Yeah, that was actually my high school art teacher, Mrs. Moen. It was ninth grade, and I took art in junior high as well, and I was always like considered the kid that drew and whatnot. But she was the first person to like say like, yeah, like I went to college for art, because she went to Cal State Fullerton, my alma mater, as well. And I'm like, wait, you went to college for art? That's really cool. And it's funny because Cal State Fullerton's not necessarily like an art school, but it's a public university. But that was it. That was like the spark. I'm like, oh, because at the time I thought, wow, she's a really cool art teacher. I could be that too. So at the time it was very much like art, but like at the time it was just like, oh, I could teach, and she did it. That's really cool. So she was the spark for sure. Because before I would draw and I loved it, but like, then I'm like, I want to do art for film, but like, how do I do that? Right? Because like I didn't know, but also I was too dumb to just look it up on the internet at the time. I'm like, someone's gonna tell me eventually when I go to college, right? Which that'll be a later thing if the question comes up. But yeah, that was the spark for sure. And I give credit to her because she was so nice, so caring, and just seeing how nice she was to like everybody, and in cultivating my confidence. Yeah, no, she was definitely the spark for sure.
Some love that. We love our teachers who guide the way. I'm always grateful
Uh-huh.
to all my teachers.
And also shout out to my mom too, because like she wasn't like necessarily directly mentoring me, but she would like lead me like on the right path too. Like when I was 4, she took me to a local community college that had like art classes, but then she mainly took me out of them because, and she flaunts this, but I don't think that's true. Where it's like she said that I was better than the art teacher, which I don't think is true. She's like, why am I spending my time, and I don't know if she had to pay for the classes. Like, why am I spending my time and money with this? So she cultivated it for sure. So I give her props because she tried,
Yeah,
along the way.
it takes a village.
Yes, for sure, absolutely.
So from Fullerton, what was your next step in your journey after
Yeah,
college?
absolutely. So something that I kind of like teased about myself before was that like, why didn't I look this up before? So growing up, I was very much like, just tell me what to do, right? Because I'm a do-gooder. I listen to what my parents tell me, right? And other people. Eventually, I grew out of that. So obviously, I'm like, okay, next step, go to college, right? My teacher went to Cal State Fullerton. That's like 20 minutes away from me. Great, I can go there. So I went to Fullerton, right? Did that for 4 years. And you were asking about after, right? After
Yeah.
Cal State Fullerton?
What
Okay,
was
good.
your next steps? Did you immediately get a job out of college, or did
Yeah.
you have to look for work for a little bit?
Yeah. So I got very, very lucky because in my third or fourth year, I started to apply for internships. And that was a big thing that people were telling me. People in my class, people like in my, family group, they're all saying like you gotta at least start to think about internships in your third year. I'm like, okay, cool. So I applied for about a year. And let me tell you, for anyone who's experienced having to apply for internships, either during school or a little bit after school, it's always debilitating whenever you get the email saying, oh, sorry, like, thanks for applying, but we considered other candidates. And you're like, god damn, like how do you move on? So I dealt that with for a year, but luckily because I graduated in 5 years because my illustration program was 4.5. So I took an extra semester. In literally my fifth year of school, I was able to get an internship at DreamWorks TV. And that was great because at the time, like I didn't learn Photoshop until I was 21. I didn't consider storyboarding literally until my fourth year of school. So like I came on late to finally finding the thing I wanted to do. And so that internship kind of like sped up my process of learning. And so then I did that for a whole year because I came back for 2 semesters, thankfully, because they wanted me back. And so then after that, then literally the timing was great. So this is where timing and luck kind of come into play in preparation. So I'd been an intern for a whole year. And then someone on my team that I interned for was going to go to Paramount Animation. And so that meant that they had to like they had to like fill in spots. So someone had to be promoted to coordinator and then someone had to be, hired on as an assistant. And so that's where I came in. So they're like, hey, and my supervisor, my manager, Mercedes Salazar, who was like, I think one of like the few Latinx people that were in the studio in general, because like I don't think I came across too many people of my culture in the studio itself. They're always asking me, "Hey, when are you graduating? When are you graduating? When are you graduating?" And I didn't want to get my hopes up, but I'm like, oh, okay, they're asking me because maybe there might be a chance I could get something. So literally, it was in May of 2018. Oh my God, that's almost 7 years ago. That's crazy.
Oh,
Yeah, that hit me really hard. Hang on. Damn. Okay.
I
Anyway,
You could take a second. Yeah.
could take a second because that hit me hard.
I
7
ain't
years
old.
ago?
I ain't old. I'm feeling it, Mr. Krabs, bro. Uh, but yeah. So in 2018, I graduated, and then literally the day, like, there's a day in between where I had my graduation party, and then the next day on Monday, because I graduated on Saturday. Literally on Monday, I drove to work. I drove to DreamWorks that day. So I was one of the few people in my class that was able to get a job right out of school, and I was very thankful because the timing and the preparation really came into play. So very, very lucky path, right? Because there are times where I feel guilty in like sharing how I got there because there are times where people who I talk to are like, "Oh yeah, like I still haven't found work after like I don't know how many months after graduating or a year," and I'm like, I don't understand where you're coming from, but I can at least try to like empathize and like listen to your story, but also at the same time help you out if possible. So I'm just very lucky and fortunate. I always count my blessings because like, damn, there are times where I'm like, any other person could have been there, but you know what? If fate and the universe decided, hey, this was your time to do this thing, all right, I'll do it. So pretty much like it was pretty much like go 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 since then. Yeah.
And that
Yeah,
was Kung Fu Panda Paws of Destiny?
Yes, that's right. That's right. For
It
anyone who
was your
actually
destiny.
yes, it was my destiny
Perfect.
to go down this path. Oh, and actually I forgot to mention, so I was a PA, a production assistant on that show, which basically is somebody who works in the production department. And the production doesn't get as much attention as it should. Basically, they're the ones that pretty much hold, like they're the glue that holds all the departments together. in animation, and not just animation, live action too. They're the ones making sure that the scheduling is there, that emails are sent to the right people, that all the artists in their departments make sure that they have their deadlines to keep in mind to turn stuff in on time. They're the ones that communicate with everybody. And so kudos to people who work in production.
Thank
Because
you.
of course, because I worked in production for 6 months during that time, and then I was able to finally get a jump into doing revisions, storyboard revisions. But working in production, it's crazy. It's really cool. Like, it's very fast paced. But just wanted to shout out the production people out there because
It's
it
not
is
much,
tough.
but it's honest work.
Yeah, true. That is so true. Proud people should get paid more. That's all I'm saying. Because they're the ones that keep it together. They're the ones that make
Amen.
the show happen. Because otherwise,
So-
no shows would ever be made. Because us artists, or at least people who are creative, they always want things to be perfect and great. You don't give them a deadline, you're never gonna see a show ever. Because they're gonna
Say
be
it
like, no, it's not
louder.
great. It's not perfect. No, give us another 7 years. We'll get it right. No, we just got to get it done, especially in TV, because
Mm.
TV and feature are very different, but TV, it's like so quick.
So fast.
Yeah. So
As
I
a
just had to,
producer, I'm very touched by your words. Thank you.
of course, anytime.
As not a producer, I'm also touched by your words.
Let's go.
And I want to say, circling back to what you said about like the guilt you felt for your journey, I don't think there's any reason you should feel guilt because it's like you said, it was a combination of luck and timing, but also preparation. Like, you worked hard for that to get that opportunity. Like, you earned it too. So there's no reason to feel guilty, I believe.
No, I appreciate it. That's just me overthinking things.
We've had a lot. I think it was our guest Paige Koblenz, who's a production coordinator on Netflix, and her advice was the very same. It's always preparation, timing, and luck. So it's something that definitely circles around where it's like you can be lucky, but you also have to be prepared. And you were definitely someone who was prepared. So
Yeah.
you
No, thank you.
earned it. You deserve it. You're talented.
Thank you.
You're talented.
I wasn't expecting to be gassed up like this. I appreciate it. Keep it coming, actually.
We're always here to
There's
gas
no
people
limit. There's
up.
no quota.
You know what? I don't know anything about Kung Fu Panda Paws of Destiny, but I'm sure you made it great.
Like,
Thank
you
you.
specifically are the reason
Finally.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I was wondering, because you worked at DreamWorks and then you went to work for Netflix and now you're at Disney. Do you have something you appreciate from each experience, or a combined like advice or knowledge you take from working at such big studios?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think I'll say, just to provide more context in terms of how I was kind of dealing with all this stuff mentally, because for me, literally going from college to DreamWorks within that short span of time, it was very overwhelming, both good and bad, right? Because now you're like, oh no, like now I gotta make sure I don't mess this up, and et cetera, right? And also too, I'd like learned storyboarding very late. So like for me, I felt like, oh no, like there's still so much I needed to learn, even though I ended up getting a story position, right? Even though it was a lower than storyboard artist at the time. Like the fact that collectively, DreamWorks, Netflix, which I worked at during the whole pandemic, which if y'all want to know about that was pretty crazy. And then at Disney, the collective thing that I appreciate is just how nice everyone is with their time. And by what I mean by everyone, specifically people who are either supervisors or people in other departments in the industry at the studios. There's never really been a person that I met who like wasn't willing to talk to me about their experience and share their advice. Like everybody that I've talked to, either through formal meetings or through just casual check-ins or just meetings during lunch, everybody was just so gracious with their time and being able to share so much advice that I was able to apply later on in my career. That's the thing I appreciate the most. And especially like knowing that even though I'm in the industry, that doesn't mean that I've figured everything out. There's still so much more to learn about your craft, about the industry, about the people you work with. At DreamWorks, my director on Boss Baby, who was actually a director on the Kung Fu Panda show while I was a PA, like they gave me a shot as an artist on the Boss Baby show. And that was because I asked them one day, and I was so nervous to approach them because I'm like, oh no, they're gonna think I'm just wanting stuff out of them. But I'm like, hey, can you look at my portfolio? This was like 6 months out of school too. Like I just wanted to keep learning. They're like, yeah, sure. So my portfolio, like, yeah, you know, you're actually good enough to do this. I'm like, what? So the fact that they were willing to look at my portfolio, right? And I'd known him for like a few months. You never know who you're gonna meet, and the people there are just so gracious and so nice. It's just I like a lot of stuff that I've learned now was just through people just sharing their knowledge, and it's been so great. And that kind of like restores your faith in humanity, especially because you think that people would be like, "Oh, this kid, like, why should I help them?" But like, no, there is, if anything, they understand where I came from during those moments in my life, and they're willing to help out and make my path easier to continue forward.
This brings to mind something that I observed while doing a deep dive on your LinkedIn.
Ooh, nice.
You were recently doing a mentorship program through the Art Center.
Yes.
And it seems like you're sort of paying forward or really applying this sort of lesson to your own life. How do you see coming into that experience?
Yeah. So what I mentioned earlier, like me having planned like a plan B if art didn't work out was to teach. I don't know. I feel like I really was very impacted by, you know, mentorship and people helping me out. Right. And just the fact that, wow, they shared this information that like now I can take with me and like build myself. Right. And like make myself a better person or make myself more competent at this thing. Knowing how I felt when someone is able to share their information, I'm like, why shouldn't I do the same thing? Especially me being first gen, also being the oldest sibling in my family, right? Like not having someone in the beginning of my life to like guide me through these things. I had to figure stuff out mostly on my own. For me to be that person, be like, hey, here's how you do these things, and here's how this will make it easier for you. I don't know. It's like the biggest obligation that I have to be able to like make it easier for people within the artist, you know, the animation or artist community to just take that stress off of them and to be able to say like, no, you can do this. Obviously, here these are things you still need to work on, but you can do it. Just that reassurance, right? Like I wanted that and I got that, so I'm just trying to give it back. And especially with that art center mentorship, it was a one-on-one mentorship with somebody who actually saw my talk at Lightbox in 2023, and they're like, and once they were approached about the program, they're like, "Hey, can I actually get this person to mentor me?" Which is rare because most of them always go through like a list of previous Art Center alumni, but this person's like, "No, like, can I get this person?" I'm like, "Whoa, okay, cool, that's great." And Sophia, who was the mentee, they were so great, and it was so awesome just to be able to like not just give them advice on the craft, but just give them advice of the industry and provide them with life skills and life advice that'll help them. And so just that sense of like, oh, okay, now I know I can do this because information about the animation industry is so scarce. It's so particular that like it's very hard to just find it, you know, casually online. You got to really dig deep and find testimonials. And I feel like it's becoming easier, especially with podcasts like these, to just be able to hear people talk about their experience. So I think it's important to really give back.
Definitely. A lot of paying it forward. That's important to me too.
Yeah.
Like when I was trying to teach myself how the animation industry worked, it was like this big mystical veil. It was like, till I get a job, I just have to pretend to understand how it works. But now the reason I wanted to do this big reason was like, I want people to be able to access this information for free and just learn directly from people that like, what are these jobs and what does it entail and like, what is it actually like versus, you know, just going in fully blind because it kind of sucks going in blind.
Yeah. It's possible, but it's just more difficult. And it's just scarier because then like what if you actually didn't do it right? Right? Then you have to like reconsider and reevaluate stuff. Whereas if someone says, no, you don't gotta do that. I saved you literally 6 months of misery. Here you go. Right? Like that's just so great for someone to just be like, no, you're good. Don't waste your time, just do that. Right.
Yeah.
And like you said, Melissa, like having been through that and like just kind of going in blind, yeah, it's possible, but it's just way more difficult.
Maybe it's the first gen in us of just being like, it sucks having to teach everything by yourself and not having anyone to guide you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paying it forward. We did the hard part.
Yeah, exactly. We did it for you. Let us take care of it.
Yeah.
That's a big part of how I view my background and career in youth work. Like, so much of it is like being the adult you didn't have when you were young. How I've approached it is working with young people in a social community setting is like training myself and others for eldership. Like this grand idea that we're just going to grow old and still have like continue to gain knowledge and experience and being able to pass it on when we're young, when we're like actively doing all this in a bag of chips is like is like transformational to how we can be as older adults. And I think that's one of my biggest motivations.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think what you do is really cool. Like, that is awesome that you're able to do what you do. And like, there are times where you don't realize the impact you're leaving behind, right? Because you're just meeting with people and you're helping them out. And it's not until like later on where it's like, hey, I met you during this time. And it turns out what you said about this actually really impacted me. And obviously you're just doing it because you love it, right? You're not looking for testimonials like that, right? That's not really what we do, but like, it feels nice, to be able to, like you said, like being able to grow older and just being able to help people who are younger to say like, yeah, no, you got this, right? Because it just helps everybody. I think it really comes down to it. We're just helping everybody. It's this positive loop of kindness and altruism. I love that word, altruism. It's like you're being altruistic. You're not gatekeeping. You're like, here's all this information, right? Like, just here
No
it
more
is.
gatekeeping.
No, absolutely not.
Hate gatekeeping.
I hate it with so much passion.
I love that energy. My little funny question is, what is something that you would gatekeep? And mine is the with popcorn. Something about it's magical.
Oh.
Interesting.
I'd gatekeep that, but I just said it out loud. So
I know.
Now it's on the podcast. Everyone's gonna
I know.
start eating them.
Or we just have to bleep it out. Or just put some music during that. I think you used to do that just for fun, just troll people. Yeah, I think I would gatekeep some kind of like food, or I would gatekeep a specific restaurant that I like to go to that's in Orange County, that like my family likes to go to, my siblings like to go to. I'm like, I want this to be like, it's somewhat popular, but like not super popular that like everyone just starts going. So I'm like, I gotta make sure I keep that baby safe. Like I'm not gonna let it get infested with other folks. But I can tell y'all after the recording.
Off the air, off the record.
Off the air, I'll tell y'all. Yes.
Sorry, I'm just the dumbass who ungatekeeps the gatekeeping. Melissa, is there something you'd gatekeep?
I don't know. I want people to like the things they like so I could talk about them.
Oh, damn, that's true. You are like that.
I'm like, will you please like this thing? And most of the time people are like, no, I'm not interested. And I'm like, dang.
Like, I should have just gatekept that.
Yeah, I end up gatekeeping by being annoying, so it's mine now. Do that with a lot of shows. So I'll have to think about it.
Never annoy me.
I say you're not annoying. Whoever thinks you're annoying is annoying. You're not.
They're ultra annoying.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to circle back to what you said earlier, Miguel, about working during the pandemic. It seems like you had a lot to say. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so it was just interesting because it was kind of like the birth of like this hybrid kind of format that we have now, right? Where we're working from home and sometimes we're at the studio. No, I just wanted to share that like that was a pretty crazy time, and that was a time where that was my first time switching from one studio to another. And so that was super stressful for me because the timing of it wasn't great, because a week before the lockdown was put into place, someone who I met from DreamWorks in talent development was working there now, and they're like, hey, this show called Inside Job is looking for revisionists, do you want to apply? And at the time, I was starting to kind of feel a little burnt out at the studio at DreamWorks TV. Not because of the people. The people that were great. I think it was just because like my expectation of what the industry was. And again, this goes back to giving back and like sharing these bits of advice because I didn't realize that like working on your portfolio in school is very different than like actually working on someone else's project or some other studio's IP, and especially not doing boarding. Right, I was just cleaning up drawings at the time. It it's exhausting, right? And so my expectations were very different. And so having been kind of like through that, and also commuting from Orange County to Glendale for like about a year and a half, just trying to save up money. It was rough, right? So then now going into lockdown, it was just so different because like something you really miss being in person is just like being able to talk to somebody in the moment, be like, hey, I'm super stressed out. Like, hey, what's, like, can you help me out? Or like, hey, you want to go get lunch? At home, you're chatting with somebody through Zoom, you get your assignment, like, okay, bye. And then they're gone. And so that was very mentally draining as well. But at the same time, it was just nice being at home to like really focus. But I don't know. I think just the fact that I literally took a test for Inside Job literally the week of lockdown was just something to share. Like the fact that literally the threat of this impending pandemic and this virus, along with like, oh no, the threat of like having to turn this test in. I don't know. It was just something to share and be like, that was something I had to go through. That was nuts. And that
Yeah.
was the first time. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's intense. I loved Inside Job. That was one of my favorite shows. Canceled too soon, as
I
all
know. I know.
Netflix shows are.
R.I.P. What a what a dumb move. I can say that. That was so dumb.
You can.
Anyway, that was a great show. And that was really cool because like that was working remote. I don't know. That's just something to like share with folks in case a job comes up that's remote. Like, there's ways to go about it. But yeah, Netflix was all during the pandemic. It sucked because they were rebuilding they're like building like a new building for it. And let me tell you, their swag was awesome. Like there's like they sent Letterman
Yeah.
jackets. Actually, hang on. Where is it? Ah, like they sent these Converse that have like Netflix.
Whoa.
I know your listeners can't even see that, but I'm holding up a dirty pair of black Converse with the
They're very
Netflix
cool
logo.
listeners. In this audio medium,
Yes,
they're
just
very cool.
imagine it.
Yeah, just imagine it.
But anyway, that's just all I want to share. It was just a crazy time. Netflix sent a lot of swag, and then their stock crashed, and then that's when I dipped. I dipped
Smart.
like literally a few months before that. I didn't even know that was going to happen, so I got lucky again with that
Timing, luck,
timing.
preparation.
Yep, just
Need to
leave
put
the
that on a
ship.
t-shirt. And then I was reading, also stalking your LinkedIn, your website, your YouTube, all of the above.
Oh, nice. Everything. Wow. Yes.
We like to go deep.
Mhm.
You have a great social, like, online presence. It was a lot to dig through.
Oh, thank you.
One of the through lines in your work was emotion, and you said that emotion
Mm.
is really important to you. I was
Mhm.
curious if you could expand on that for the listeners.
Absolutely. Wow. I think that's the first time someone asked me about that because I think for me, I don't know. I'm a sap. I feel like, if a good story gets to me, I'll get emotional, and I like feeling that. I don't know. There's just something so profound about that, especially if someone were to tell their story, right? When mom told me about my dad's journey of like emigrating from Mexico to the US, I remember the first time she told me that, I started bawling my eyes out, just thinking about like the conflict, right? And again, if you think about it, like in terms of entertainment, not that what he went through was entertaining, but just in terms of like the core of that story is like somebody willing to help their family back home by risking their own life to go to a place that they don't know, they don't speak the
Yeah.
language, but all in that motivation, their want is to be able to provide for their family, right?
Mm.
And so that's very compelling. And so for me, I don't know, like just growing up watching films and like I remember it wasn't until I was a teenager. Actually, no, when I saw Wizard of Oz, I remember that was the first time I felt emotional, like towards the end. I'm like, wait, movies or TV shows can make you cry. They can make you actually feel things. And there's something so potent in that where it's like, if I'm able to do that, I don't know. There's something about, in a way, kind of selfishly being like, like, if I can do that, that'd be so amazing because then you're able to like articulate a truth to people, like articulate something like, oh, I know how it feels to, be afraid to tell people what you really feel, right? Like then you go about and you make a story from that. And then you realize people who maybe haven't experienced that are like, wait a second, wow, that's really cool that, this story or this person was able to express that. And so that's something I feel like is so compelling. And, watching films like that make me emotional, I'm like, oh man, I want to do that. Cause, the fact that somebody I don't know made this movie or made this TV show that had these truths and had these things that you really could relate to or begin to understand. And for you to feel emotional, I don't know. There's something incredible about that. And that's the thing where I feel like, film and TV, like that type of medium is just so special because you have sound, you have music, you have visuals, right? You have all these things that combine to create this synthesis of storytelling, right? And me being at Disney, they, are the curators of that, especially with like, their films in the beginning, like, Bambi and like all these like Dumbo. The fact that they're able to channel that kind of energy into their storytelling, I think is really great. And, I was actually listening to, I think it was your intro episode, which is like the 13-minute one. And you guys are talking about TV and things that you like. And it's cool because you have stuff that you like that is actually like high quality and stuff that, you're just watching for fun that's trashy or whatever. But going back to your question, it's like, I don't know. I love when things are emotional because I think that's where we're able to kind of strip down all these walls that we have, right? Like I think societally, we're always forced to like, especially in Latino culture and even other cultures as well, you're always forced to like put up this front and be like, no, like being emotional is a sign of weakness. But really it's not. It's actually like the biggest strength that we have because that generates empathy and that's how we're able to understand more about each other. And I'm trying to do this more with my storytelling because some stuff is comedy, but I want to infuse that heart in there because that elevates the comedy, that elevates whatever you do in your storytelling, right? Because you can have something entertaining, but if you have, and you don't have to be too sappy with it or too on the nose or too preachy, but at least having it in there, people can understand that. Like the Nacho Libre storyboard that I did on my website, like there might be some heart in that because you have somebody who's unapologetically positive.
Wait, sorry, the Nacho Libre storyboard you did on your website? Melissa, why didn't you send this to me?
Yeah.
Marvel loves Nacho Libre so much.
Sorry,
I'm so
continue.
sorry. I failed you.
No, it's okay. It's Nacho Libre fighting Thanos, so that's all you need to know for going into it. Even that one, like you could say that one's not meant to be emotional, but like there is character in there, and there's that heart of like you have this person who's like so unapologetically positive and passionate against somebody who's like the definition of like evil and like true strength. Those things clashing, I don't know, something about that's really cool. My biggest privilege is being able to do that stuff outside of work and like to connect with people, especially like with a board that I did called Beach Day Blues. That one was definitely a very vulnerable one because I dealt with envy during that specific time and being able to confront that within myself and to be able to say like, listen, this is a valid thing to feel, but don't let that control you. I feel like that emotional core of it is what like really resonates with people, and that's why I continue to keep seeking it out. Um, and so yeah, I feel like that's important for me at least. Some people, and again, it's okay if like for someone who's like, no, I just want to entertain, I want to do comedy or I want to do action, but I don't know. I feel like that next tier of entertainment really comes down to like them having some sort of sincerity or even some sort of like clear thematic argument, and so for me it's like, wow, like viewing it like that, I don't know, makes it more fun for me to then come up with like new storylines of like what kind of argument do I want to make next.
Yeah.
And then from
The
there,
emotional through line.
yeah, I think that's some of the best shows, some of the best content out there has very clear through lines. Like best example I can think of now, because I've seen it referenced so many times, it's Finding Nemo. It's literally like, if you love somebody, let it go. But then like that's the thematic argument. And then it's executed through the perspective of a clownfish dad who has their son kidnapped. Like that is just, and I think that's where animation really does its best work, is when you're not telling it through the perspective of people, you're telling it through the perspective of an animal, a creature. Like I feel like that's where animation really shines, because even Toy Story 2, like especially the third one, like Pixar, again, I work for Disney, but Pixar is under the umbrella, right? But when movies, even Zootopia, like, like they have clear thematic arguments that really make it feel emotional. Cause then you watch, you're like, wow, I learned something new, or wow, I feel seen because I didn't think that somebody else out there in the world thought that way too. And that's
Mhm.
where that emotion generates that connection. Because then you have somebody like, wow, this person can understand where I'm coming from, but they're
Yeah.
able to take these feelings that I've had and put them out there to the world and be like, this is how I feel. And then for people to be like, wow, that's incredible. I'm glad you feel this way. Like I want to be able to embrace that. I can talk about this stuff for forever because I feel like that's the core of why I like doing what I'm doing.
And you know what? I would pay for you to do that TED Talk.
Oh,
Me too.
I have $0. I'm making the small bucks in social work, but I would pay for you to do that TED Talk.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You heard it
I
here,
Second
folks.
thing I want to say.
Yeah.
One of our previous guests, Ella Cesare, was talking about art as a cure for loneliness.
Mm,
And
Yes.
so much of what you were saying earlier on in our conversation about like art being something that sort of speaks to your introversion, and
mhm.
then this talking about emotion. Do you think art for you would be described as a cure for loneliness, and sort of how?
Yeah, I think so. Because I feel like a lot of art requires a lot of introspection. And so I think because like, obviously there's artists who are very extroverted and they're able to make friends there. But I think for the folks who struggle with that, I think it is a way to be able to express yourself in a way that words can't. And so to have an image or to have a story convey that, I think that's so powerful. And to be able to have somebody else who may be in the same boat be like, wait a second, you're the same as me. Or, you have a different perspective, but we understand each other. I don't know. I feel like that's where, especially now in the age of like social media and distractions and all these things, the fact that art is still the thing that like connects people in a way where, heck, after movie conversations, right? In the theater lobby, like those kinds of things just generate so much conversation. But yeah, I think so, because I think for me, it's helped me deal with things a lot more positively and a lot more constructively than to either, get frustrated at somebody or like just feel sorry for myself. It's like, no, like, I don't know, it's a way for you to kind of hash out how you feel and you're just able to connect with people because people, even though people could be very like, left brain or right brain, something about art and storytelling, it just connects everybody. It just speaks to something that people just love, right? Like you see an image and it just makes you think about something. It makes you, even if the artwork is supposed to represent this thing, everybody can just interpret things differently. So yeah, I highly agree. And that's why we need artists. That's why like in the way that the animation industry has kind of struggled, it's weird because 3 or 4 of the highest grossing movies of last year were literally animation. And again, that speaks to people able to use that to connect. Going back to what you're saying, Marv, it's like that's really what it comes down to. I don't know if that made sense, but I just have to say I highly agree. It connects us in the best way, and it empowers us too. Because there might be people who are more bold in what their statements are, and then that helps you be like, wow, I can do that. You know, and it's just it allows people to start to like unburden themselves from whatever kind of you know doubts or insecurities that are holding you back. And I feel like that's helped me a lot because otherwise I don't know how I would be able to grapple with those things.
Sure.
I think everything you said, I resonate. I agree. Cosign. I've written about this. I've talked about it all the time. I wrote my thesis about how animation is important, and is better at storytelling than live action. At me in the comments.
Uh-huh.
But I also think your perspective on emotion and storytelling is probably what makes you a really great storyboard artist, because if you can have such a clear and great understanding of why emotion is important in comedy and action,
Uh-huh.
and the importance of characters needing to connect on an emotional through line, I can tell why you got the jobs you got, because it makes you a better storyteller to understand the importance of emotion, even in a comedy. I think that's why
Mhm.
I love sitcoms like Modern Family and
Yeah.
Habit, because they're not just funny, the characters matter and their relationships matter. And that's
Yes.
why I love them so
Yes.
much more than like a comedy where they're just mean to each other, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love
So
stories.
good. Yes.
How many seasons of It's Always Sunny have you watched, Melissa?
I mean, I also like It's Always Sunny, but for different reasons. But it's not, I don't like It's Always Sunny as much as I like Modern Family. How many times have I rewatched Modern Family? Not important to this conversation.
No, it is very important.
Like 4 times all the way through. Sometimes back to back.
We're not talking about that time.
But yeah, I feel the same way about storytelling and the need of the characters to resonate, which is why, another hot take, I liked Inside Out's Dream Productions more than Inside Out 2.
Interesting. Okay, I've yet to see it, but I've heard people raving about it, so I want to check that out.
Go watch Dream Productions. Maybe because we're also going to be biased and we work in film industry, and it's a little bit about like people who work making films.
Cool.
But it was like the characters in it were so much more interesting. It was like really personal. Like the main character, she was like struggling in her career and being like, am I out of touch with Riley? Am I losing my connection with this person I love? And she was hurting people because of like self-sabotaging. And Inside Out 2, the characters just didn't connect with each other as much. Like joy and sadness weren't even in the same room anymore. And what made Inside Out 1 amazing was joy and sadness's relationship. At least I think so. But I don't know. That's my thoughts.
That's a great take. I like it.
So I thought Dream Productions was beautiful and I cried at the end. So go watch it. It's really good.
Heck yeah.
It's only 4 episodes. I love stories. Thank you for sharing. Everything you said just made me so happy.
Good.
Oh man. Now we're already at time. I feel like we didn't even talk about what a storyboard artist does, but do you have any advice?
Yes.
For a storyboard artist, like aspiring ones?
Yeah. So no, that's great. So just to briefly describe, so obviously we talk about stories and we talk about like, growing up watching film and TV. What I do, right? So a story artist pretty much is the one that sets the foundation for visually the foundation for how a show's gonna play, right? Visually. You could equate it to, you can equate it to like a comic artist, but instead the panels are actually panels that play on screen. And you have an editor who goes in and edits those panels to time, to sound effects, to temp voice. And then it's basically a comic that, becomes a show, right? But it's made up of very crappy, very fast doodles, sometimes beautiful ones if you have the time. And so pretty much to kind of add more context to my journey, right? So like growing up, I love making my own stories, my own comics, but now I can actually do that like in film and in TV where, you get the script and the script is made up of a bunch of words. Actually, hang on. I have this script of the lighthouse. And so like, you basically you look at this and you're like, this is so boring, what is this? But it's my job as a story artist to then take, say, like 3 or 4 pages of a movie, right? We have 10 artists, 3 pages, 4 pages each, right? That's about what? Like, I can't math right now. But anyway, 90 pages per script, right? Like 10 artists get about a few pages. And then we basically draw out the movie, how we actually see it in real time. And that's really amazing because I love writing and I love drawing. So those 2 things really go hand in hand. So for anyone interested, I feel like, boarding really encompasses a lot of different departments, right? You have visual development who, then does the job of making those storyboard panels and ideas look very pretty and gorgeous to look at. And then you have like, we also deal with like lighting and mood. So then the lighters who actually set up the lights in animation then have to figure out like, okay, the way that this person boarded it gives off this kind of mood. So we have to set up the lights this way. So storyboard is actually like, we're the first, art department in there that really starts to like we set the tone for how the story's going to play. We have to deal with pacing. Then we have to do with acting. How do the characters act in this scene? How do we make sure that the character's arc tracks all the way through the stories? In TV, a lot of times the scripts are very much locked. And so the storyboarder's job is only to then just storyboard out the movie, or start the TV show. But in feature, we very much have a hand in impacting the story itself. So we work directly with the writer to then be like, actually, you gave me this scene, but like I feel like some things need to change here because I don't know if this character, I don't know if what they're doing makes sense with who they are. And also, is there a way to consolidate that or add to it? We're pretty much not just drawing out the scenes, but we're actually having to conceptually figure out, like we were talking about, the through line. What's their want? What are their needs? Right? Like, how do you make the character, likable, but also give them a flaw for them to develop from and to grow from, especially in Western storytelling, right? European storytelling, that's a whole different story. But like, the storytelling we love growing up, we have a character who has some sort of flaw that they need to overcome or recontextualize it in some way, right? That feels meaningful. And then you take them on their journey, and then they discover stuff, right? Act 2 happens, and then Act 3 is like the big emotional moment where they have to realize something. There's either a villain or not. It all depends. But what I love about what I do is, we're able to talk about the story, and like I've been able to learn so much about storytelling, especially animated storytelling and just Western storytelling, that like it makes me excited to then go in and apply that to my own work. But that's a gist of what a storyboard artist does, and especially with a Disney and even in other feature studios, it's the same kind of deal where a story is done in like many different versions, and then eventually, hopefully, fingers crossed, the movie actually turns out to be well. That's how it goes, but it's really fun, and it's hard
Sounds
too
fun.
because a lot of drawings, sometimes very tight deadlines. But you know what? There's that excitement of like you try to figure out the story, you crack it, and then you have conversations with people, and it's just really special. Like I had a chance to work on Zootopia 2 for like about 3 weeks on a sequence, and it was just so fun just diving into the world and just trying to understand the characters and try to add those moments of comedy, but also those specific moments. You're really approaching it from like a semi-analytical view of like, how do you make sure that all these pieces put together work? When you watch it, it feels effortless, right? But it takes a lot of effort to make sure that a scene plays out well. So that's like a
Yep.
very speedy explanation of what boarding is, but pretty much that's the essence, right? We're just trying to craft a story visually in a way that's appealing, emotional, heartfelt, funny, right? We're trying to do all those things.
And you all do it so well. I'm a huge fan of the storyboard artist.
Thank you. Thank you.
So do you have any advice for aspiring storyboard artists?
Yes. I'm trying to think of big ones. I think a big one, watch film. Watch a lot of film. Like, don't just watch film that you're like that, is you only watch one genre, right? Like, watch all kinds of films, right? Like obviously watch good film, watch old film, even watch bad film, because maybe there might be something there that you can learn from, or things that you can learn not to do. um, but first off, love film, right? But also understand that as a board artist, like then your job is to try to think about film all the time and story, and that can get exhausting. But know that there's going to be ups and downs with it. Do film studies, meaning it might not sound glamorous, but I personally love it. Is look up a clip on YouTube or watch a scene of a movie and just pause during each shot and like actually draw out the frame and try to study different things about it. Study composition, study cutting, pacing, right? Like, how long does this person hold this shot for? Like those little things start to really amplify your filmmaking sensibilities. And that's just the filmmaking side. Then there's the drawing side, right? Do life drawing, learn about anatomy, try to understand that like you're trying to convey ideas, so the drawings don't have to be beautiful, but they have to be clear enough to convey what you're trying to convey. Learn Photoshop and Storyboard Pro or Procreate. Like, those, being able to perform at the industry level, you need to learn those programs, because Storyboard Pro was mainly TV and Photoshop was mainly feature, but now people are using Storyboard Pro for feature, right? So from a technical side, learn that. And then at least now just like look up podcasts or at least episodes about storyboard artists, or like find people's portfolios online, Instagram. Like Instagram, obviously Instagram has gone through many changes, but at least when I was using it in school, like just having a bunch of artists post their stuff, you learn so much from them just from seeing their work. That's really incredible. And then learn story too. Like actually learn how to apply story structure. Obviously, listeners can't see it, but like Save the Cat is like a good starter, right? You have Save the Cat,
Oh my god, I love Save the Cat.
right? Like, obviously I don't hold this in like to a T, but like, there's elements of it that feel very good. And then there's Sid Field's screenplay, the foundation of screenwriting. That's really good too. And then you also have screenwriting, the sequence approach, like pretty much find any sort of screenwriting book, and also find screenplays too. Like read screenplays and see how the filmmaker was able to translate the words into images. That also helps a lot too. So just dive into it. Dive into as many resources as possible. And then yeah, that's like the big general advice I would give. Focus on filmmaking and story and drawing, and try to find a way to make those work together. So hopefully that's helpful.
I
Speaking
read
of,
the Spider-Verse screenplay, and it's one of my favorites because the little in-betweens, like the stage directions,
uh-huh.
are so good and clever. Like
Yeah.
it just sets the tone for the movie so well. It's a good screenplay.
I
A lot
gotta
of
read
fun to
that one. I have not. I've missed that one. Yeah.
It was like someone posted it on. I think they posted it on Twitter, Philip Lord, for free, and I was like, "Thank you. I will be
Yeah.
reading."
Actually, yes, they did years ago. I just didn't get a chance to read it. But thanks for
Yeah.
reminding me. I gotta read that one. Because that's such a fast-paced film. Like
Mhm.
how do you and granted, the animation process is so different because a lot of times the screenplay and the story are kind of being made together, but like
Exactly.
to be able to write it out for the boarders to then be like, here you go, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Right? That's very important too. So that's a good point. That's a good point too. It's like one way it's written and then one way it's conveyed, you know?
Yeah,
So
that's why I wanted to read it because I was so curious about
yeah.
how it was translated from script.
Yeah.
So
And it's
that was a
not
fun
and
one to
it's
read.
not one to one all the time. There's some things maybe that were cut out or things that were elevated. And that's the thing that's really
Yeah,
exciting. And it applies to both animation and live action too. A lot of times an actor be like, hey, I have this idea for this character. Well, it's not in the script, but it sounds cool. Let's try it out. There's the beauty in that. It's not super rigid.
definitely. No, I love that you had all those books on hand too. Just like, bing, bang. Here's my textbooks.
And that's not to say that's the one way, like, like if it's just one book that resonates with you, great. But also like take those books with a grain of salt because the one asterisk I would put on those screenwriting books is that none of those people really, actually wrote like notable screenplays that were made into film. That's not to put any shade on them, but right, it's like it's one thing to study it, then it's one thing to do it. So, but there's still valuable information in there, right? It's just reading it and then being able to apply it on your own. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, but just consume. Like one thing is I'm a lifelong learner. Like I'm gonna learn for my whole life, right? I'm not just gonna stop once I reach a certain point. Like there's something about just consuming so much information and just being able to use that to continue to just improve your craft. Like that's the thing that like keeps me going. So being able to think of it like that, like and not just assuming, okay, once I become this artist, then I'm good. It's like no, no, no. You're always learning. You'll never stop.
I want a Miguel Baltazar like movie book club where we just watch a movie and we talk about it. Because I bet you have the best takes.
Oh, stop. I mean, sometimes.
Like, not they don't have to be intellectual every time, but
Yeah.
sometimes it just be like, "Yo, what'd you think of Sonic 3?" And
Oh,
we talk about it.
yeah, like, listen, like, that movie looks cool. Like, I never really saw the Sonic movies, but, like, I'm down to watch them now. The 3rd one seems to be doing really well and really well received. Like, you know what? Heck. Like, I'm not the kind of person that, like, only seeks out to watch, like, super elevated film. Like, if there's, like, a fun popcorn flick, like, Twisters or, like Gladiator 2 wasn't great, but, like, at least any of those movies, right, that, like, aren't seen as, like, Criterion level stuff, like, I don't care. Like, I love Nacho Libre. I'll watch that shit all the time, you know? I I
Marvel
quote it
Nacho
I
Libre,
quote it as much as I can. Like, it's
for sure.
in like, that movie is in my DNA. Like, I love that movie, you know? Right? Just freaking hook me up with that, baby. Like, just.
Yeah.
But again, it's really good to bring up too. It's like, you don't have to, like, be pretentious about it. Like, you can love any movies, like obviously you can have different tastes. Like you can have, if you're a Sergio Leone fan, great. But if you're also like a Michael Bay fan, who cares? Like it doesn't matter.
No
That's a good thing to think
gatekeeping.
of. Yes,
Love is love.
love is love. Exactly. That's what I'm always saying.
Love it. I could talk to you for another hour. We won't keep you because it's late
Yeah, I know.
for everyone.
I right back at you, but yeah, no, I think it's time to. I think it's time to call it.
When it's time to go to bed.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to plug? I know we saw your Kickstarter for Tape Man or anything else.
Oh yeah, so that I thank you so much for mentioning Tape Man. Well, we made the movie that already ended, but eventually, so right now I'm working on a short film with my brother, a live action short film. That is, and this is I haven't mentioned it to anybody, so this is the first outlet. So like I want to make a 1970s inspired Mexican action flick in that kind of style with like the cheesy zooms, film grain, cool like disco music. Like I want it, I want to do like all of that. So that's what I'm working on now. So later on my Instagram, I'll be posting that, like little tidbits and stuff, and maybe pieces of an animatic. But yeah, my website is always there to check out, to look at my storyboards, miguelbaltazar.com, MiguelBaltazar.com. And then there's my Instagram too, and also my YouTube channel, which I'm still always thinking about in the back of my mind. But making videos is so time consuming that I know that I eventually want to be able to update some of my videos from the past. But that's also a great resource to check out for tutorials and like advice and stuff. But yeah, other than that, that's it. I mean, right now I'm still working at Disney Animation, thankfully, despite all the stuff that's been happening. And yeah, I'm just doing the thing, just still
Doing
kicking
great.
it.
Thank you so much for talking with us. It's been so fun.
No, of course. I think this was like the most fun I've had on any sort of podcast. And granted, I've only been on 2 before, and these are with friends. These are my own friends, so like this has been really fun
Wow.
and a
What an honor.
pleasure to meet y'all. So hopefully I run into y'all again. Seriously, this was
Yeah,
such a blast.
definitely.
For real. Wish you the best. Thank you for coming. Have a great night.
Yeah.
Thank you. Y'all too.
Take care.
Yes. Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Wow. One of us,
Yeah.
when you meet someone and you're like, that's my new friend.
Yeah. Like, we just met, but I think we have the same brain, actually.
What a wonderful, amazing person who deserves all the good things in the world.
Yeah.
That was great. I feel it's like 9:30 p.m., but I feel so awake and alive because it's just such a good conversation.
Yeah.
Amazing. Marv and the listeners, this is important. By the time this comes out, I don't know when it'll have already happened, but the true finale of Craig of the Creek comes out this week. And I am not okay. I can't live in a world where there's no more Craig of the Creek. I have been commenting on Ben Levin's goodbye posts on Instagram with my emotional thoughts, and he has been liking all of my comments.
How many comments?
A lot of them, because he keeps posting every time an episode comes out. So there's like the JP goodbye episode, the Kelsey goodbye episode, Elders of the Creek goodbye episode, and I've just been writing about how much all of those characters mean to me.
Okay.
And I get a like every time. The voice actor for Kelsey liked it too.
Oh, hell yeah.
So
I really thought you meant
slow.
there was a single post and you just kept commenting on it. I'm like double, triple, quadruple commenting, Melissa. Like, isn't that a little bit of a weird look?
I mean, I am sort of, but at least on separate posts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like this close to getting a Craig of the Creek tattoo, but I know I should space it out a little bit.
Yeah,
from the
take some time.
emotionalness.
Let it settle.
I'm just so sad,
Yeah.
They also took off the first 3 seasons from HBO Max, so I can't even go back and rewatch Kelsey Alone. So what's the point? I'm fine, I'm normal. I was just thinking about it, about like good stories, because that's what Miguel was talking about, and I was like, Craig the Greek.
That's what
I'm
I
in
was
my
thinking.
feelings. Well, we should say goodbye to our listeners.
Yes.
Our cover art was made by Les. I'll put their Instagram in the show notes. But thank you, Les, for the beautiful cover art. It's great. They also did our sticker.
Yes. Thank you, Les.
And remember,
there's
not
one
right
way
to get your first internship in animation.
There's not one right way to pay forward the kindness you've received.
There's not one right way to use emotion in your storytelling.
There's not one right way to reference Nacho Libre 3 times in one podcast.
There's not one right way to work through the pandemic.
And there's not one right way to gatekeep your favorite place in OC.
Goodbye, listeners. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your mom. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.